This coming weekend, the 11th of November, marks Armistice Day, sometimes called Remembrance Day. This day is held in honor of those who fell during the First World War and marks the date, November 11, 1918, on which the war to end all wars came to an end. It was hoped that the world would never again see war on the scale experienced during the First World War. But of course, during the Second World War, we saw even greater atrocities. And after it became clear that the Nazis had murdered around 12 million people, 6 million of whom were Jews in what was known as the Holocaust, the phrase "never again" became widely used in the hope that we would never see the brutality, the dehumanization, the genocide that characterized the Shoah. We are witnessing another genocide, a genocide in which Israel has so far killed over 10,000 people, of whom 4,000 at least are children. Israel has committed multiple war crimes, first of all by enacting collective punishment against all Palestinians for the actions that Hamas carried out in Israel itself. Then, by the use of chemical weapons in the force of white phosphorus, and also in its explicit targeting of hospitals, schools, civilian homes, and other civilian architecture. As we near Armistice Day, hundreds of thousands of Britons want to yet again take to the streets to protest the genocide in Israel, to call for an immediate ceasefire, a halt to the appalling violence and war crimes. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who we should recall is unelected by anybody but a small group of Conservative Party members and Tory MPs, has said that it would desecrate the memories of those who fell in the First World War to call for peace, to call for a ceasefire. The reason that we pay homage to those who died in conflict, to those who died awful, gruesome deaths in the trenches of World War I, is because we call for peace. It is a call to end all war, to end all war crimes, to end all genocide, to end all atrocities, to suggest that walking the streets of London, in our hundreds of thousands, people of all ages, all colors, all religions and those of no faith, united in calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, to suggest that this in any way desecrates the memory of those who fell in war and conflict is simply absurd and frankly quite offensive. Israel using weapons provided to it by the United States, by European weapons makers, and by Britain, who has sold almost £500 million of weapons to Israel in just the last 8 years. And those weapons include parts for the F-35 jets that are currently strafing the Gaza Strip and other parts of the occupied territories, that are currently killing tens of thousands of innocent people, including over 4,000 children. My mother was a Holocaust survivor. She lost dozens of her family in the concentration camps of the Holocaust, particularly in Auschwitz, where I have lectured on genocide prevention. To my mother, never again meant never again shall any people, however they are defined, have to endure what Jews and the other victims of the Nazis had to endure during the Holocaust. It meant never again should innocent children, should innocent people anywhere be killed by a regime that somehow believes itself superior to others and believes its people superior to others. I also was privileged to serve under Nelson Mandela in the first post-democratic South African government, the first government after the defeat of the system of apartheid. I have also spent many years researching the arms trade and other elements of Israel. Israel is an apartheid society. Israel is committing genocide and war crimes in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories. For those of us who truly want peace, for those of us who don't believe it is appropriate for our weapons makers to be making billions and billions of pounds out of the suffering and immiseration of others, we have to call for a ceasefire now. For all of us who believe in justice and the equality of all, who believe that every single human life is sacred and has identical value to any other human life, we must be calling for an urgent ceasefire now.
But for anybody who changes his principles depending on whom he is dealing, that is not a man who can lead a nation.
And when our politicians, be they Tory, Labour, the President of the United States of America, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, or anybody else, refuse to endorse the call for a ceasefire, we must remind them that they have the blood of tens of thousands of innocents on their hands. And in addition to saying never again, we say not in our name. We call on everybody to demand not only an immediate ceasefire, but an end to apartheid in Israel, an end to the brutal and illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories. And we call for, until such time as that happens, we call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel because they ended apartheid in South Africa. They were crucial in ending apartheid in South Africa, and they will be crucial in ending the occupation of Palestine. In addition, we must demand that all arms sales to Israel cease immediately. Our tax pounds and dollars and euros are used to massively subsidize our country's weapons makers. It is therefore our tax money that is being used to provide the weapons that are being used in the slaughter of innocent Palestinians. Britain is also home to 8 factories of Elbit Systems, part of Israel's largest defense company. Elbit has been providing weaponry, sophisticated killer drones, and other military materiel to the Israeli Defense Force for decades now. Brave activists in the UK have forced the closure of 2 Elbit factories in this country, and the company lost a contract worth almost £300 million with Britain's Ministry of Defence. We must support and intensify such direct action where factories in Britain are contributing the military equipment that is being used in the genocide of tens of thousands in the occupied Palestinian territories. In addition to our call for an immediate end to arms sales to Israel, we must also demand that the International Criminal Court fully investigate all war crimes that have been and that are being committed in Gaza and in the Palestinian territories, and that all those responsible, not just those who gave the political orders, those who gave the military orders, but also those who provided the weapons, who provided the diplomatic cover for this genocide to take place, must appear before the International Criminal Court in The Hague. As Rishi Sunak tries to stop Britons marching for peace on Armistice Day, a day that calls for peace and has for 105 years now, we must remind ourselves that 76% of people in Britain want an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. So we have an unelected Prime Minister going against the wishes of the vast majority of British people. And he is getting the support of the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, my own constituency MP, who, despite being a human rights lawyer, says he doesn't want to wade in on international law, says he doesn't call for a ceasefire. Let us gather respectfully on Armistice Day, and let us echo the calls that we first heard at the conclusion of the war to end all wars. Never again. Never again, for all time, for all people. The world will not abandon you, regardless of what our political leaders think and say.